internal tools in practice, right?
No, but it establishes a distinction between the deployer and the provider of an AI system.
So in short, if I understand you correctly, you're saying that when actually acquiring or building or getting some external tool, then we have a bit more better grasp of what the best practices should be, but not so much for internal tooling or development. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the obligations, again, if we look at the AI Act, the obligations about how, where and what to do when placing a product in the market are for the provider. And most of the obligations are for the providers of high-risk AI systems. So it's like, okay, there are obligations for providers, but a big portion of these obligations are related to those developing high-risk AI systems. And there are a lot of categorization. So the point here is that we as the company, or the companies, shouldn't overthink the governance and the, let's say, the compliance when dealing with AI. My invitation is to make it as simple as possible and start thinking, okay, are we going to develop AI to be commercialized, to make it available into, for example, an European market? Yes or no? If yes is the answer, okay, you are a provider. So we need to look at what are the obligations of a provider. And most of them are related to, let's say, trustworthiness and
But does the same apply for an internal provider in a company then? So if you build something for the employees in some way?
Yes, but in this context, this will be just best practice. So it doesn't have to go through the, let's say, the conformity assessment process required for a product that will be commercialized, that will be available or placed in the market and make available for public use.
Well, this was news to me. So you mean that if we develop some internal tooling, we don't have to go through the same kind of compliance process as if we were to procure an external tool?
That's the analysis that we are establishing right now. That the implementation of this regulation or these obligations from the regulation should be applied as a best practice. And if we are talking about developing of internal tools, if we are talking about the deployment of tools developed by external actors, let's say Microsoft, AWS, OpenAI, they are the providers of that solution. So it's their obligation to fulfill the requirements and go through if they require, the certification process.
But if a hospital develop a new tool to do AI surgery, for example, and then they deploy it internally, and then something bad happens potentially, would not the AI Act be as applicable in that case as
it
if
is,
they were?
But the tricky.
Let me answer.
Okay.
Yeah, but the context is different because it's different to, for example, if you develop a chatbot or let's say some tool for your intranet, the intranet of the organization, where you are not facing external customers with this type of solution, or external actors from your organization. In the example you're given, in this case, Anders, is the situation or the app is developed, is the main goal of this is to face an external customer. It's probably not the best word to use when talking about the patient or someone that
it's still high risk, right?
It's a high risk, and you are facing an external actor, external stakeholder from the, let's say, the hospital organization. That's different. That's not internal use because you are facing a customer, and in that context, you are placing the product in the market.
Just because the user, so to speak, is an external customer.
Exactly.
So if then let's say a construction site is using AI to detect risks or control an elevator or something in a construction site. So AI is now controlling, the security of that risk, and then suddenly it breaks, and a person in that company is killed because of the AI system controlling the elevator, so to speak, is broken.
In that scenario, we are talking about safety component. AI as a safety component that goes directly to high risk, and that goes under the scope of the AI.
So even if the user is still internal, then it would be still applicable?
Yeah, in this context, yeah, because it's seen as a safety component. The AI system is a key element in the guaranteeing the safe operation of this type of solution or system.
Really cool. And you had these kind of discussions yesterday, right?
We have this discussion. Yeah, that it was interesting because the topic of one of the presentations during this session was about AI governance, and before that, there was also another presentation about the implementation of AI in SBT, and SBT more or less is a kind of non-governance or non-existing
Swedish
governance.
television.
Yeah, exactly. So they don't have like clear rules on governance. So we triggered this discussion after these two presentations. When it was presented how SBT is working and dealing with AI in a kind of anarchist approach. I'm not going to label it in that way,
that, I guess,
but close to, and the importance or the relevance of governing AI that was presented in the last presentation, the last session. So we started this discussion. And I would say that this is still work in progress. So many of the questions you are asking here are the questions that we are internally discussing about. And the invitation here is probably to think about or to start working in a collaborative environment with other experts in the field. It's engineering, it's R&D, it's legal area, is compliance, because the analysis of these kind of situations, the analysis of these potential business cases required, let's say, a holistic approach. It's not only about, my interpretation based on my first impressions about how the system should work. We should incorporate other perspectives.
Yeah. And what was the event yesterday, by the way?
The event was the Top 33 organized by Hybrid, and it was a cool event because the idea was to talk about AI, agentic AI, how to incorporate these elements in the organization. And as it was mentioned by Goran in the session, it's a perfect scenario to realize that we are all in the same shit, we are facing the same challenges, we are facing the same problems. And this type of events opens the floor for these collaborative environments where we can work together on finding solutions and alternatives to the problems we are facing in this new field.
Cool. I feel we have so many uncertain answers about a regulation like the AI Act that is actually enacted already, but we still don't really know how to comply with it, which is kind of an interesting situation, I think, for many companies. But to discuss that a bit more, we are really proud to have you here, Luis Martínez, which is an AI compliance expert, right, at Assa Abloy.
Assa Abloy.
And you've been working at a various number of really prestigious companies in Volvo and in Ericsson. You also received the DARE Awards, right? For Responsible AI Person of the Year.
Last year, exactly.
Yeah, congrats on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Well, with that, we love to get into some of the discussions here. And but before we get more into the details, perhaps you can give a quick introduction to yourself. Who are Luis Martínez and how did you get into the role that you have today?
Okay, Luis Martínez is a Colombian engineer who came to Sweden to complete or to following the dream of doing a PhD in wireless communications. That's the reason why I came to Sweden. To do my PhD in wireless communications. I'm a family guy, wife, 2 children. Really interested on contributing to understanding or to contribute to the industry and understanding the compliance challenges connected to AI. Passionate for, let's say, taking a holistic approach when dealing with different type of problems, because usually the solution for a specific situation or a specific challenge doesn't come directly from one specific perspective. It's important to try to cover, let's say, the different perspectives in order to find a solution or to fine-tune a solution that can help us to overcome specific challenges, and that's been the approach I've been applying during my professional career and my professional life. And here in Sweden, it's like, it's natural because it's part of the way of working here. It's like, okay, the consensus approach, what we were discussing before this. That's interesting.
Yeah. And when did you come to Sweden, by the way?
15 years ago.
15 years. And so it was for the PhD purpose?
It was for the PhD. And the plan was, the original plan was to go back to Colombia, but life happens. It's like
exactly.
We found with my wife that this is a nice place, stable place to have family, to raise children, and that's why I have 2 Swedish children in the family.
Awesome. And perhaps you can just elaborate a bit more. What do you do today in your role at Assa Abloy?
A little bit of everything. No, but when I was hired I was recruited by Assa Abloy. The main challenge of the organization was to build the compliance framework. So,
and perhaps you can just quickly, remind people what is really Assa Abloy and what do they do?
Assa Abloy is the leading company on the production of access systems, access solutions.
Locks.
And we are famous for locks and keys. But this is one part of our extensive portfolio. Assa Abloy is a company that's been growing since it's a 30 years old company. And
how many employees?
63,000.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it's big, and it's growing every second week by acquiring new companies. Every time it's like the organization has this strategy of growing, of looking for organic growth, but also growing by acquiring other companies. So under the Assa Abloy umbrella or brand, you can find a lot of big and small companies, all of them related to access systems, access solutions, identification. HID, for example, jail are part of this consortium.
Awesome.
So
your current,
So Assa Abloy, for many of us, is known as the consumer brand, Assa Abloy, the locks and the keys and all that. But of course, there is a quite large portion of the portfolio which is more B2B, more industrial, like organizing the access system in a jail as a larger type system.
Yeah. So it's B2B, B2C in that sense.
Yeah. But I think that's the thing that is not well known outside the industry, so to speak. So everybody knows Assa Abloy in Sweden, but we recognize Assa Abloy as the B2C part only, I think.
Yeah.
So I'm like that as well, if I'm not looking careful at the website.
Yeah, actually, when I moved to Assa Abloy, and I told my friends, I told my family, okay, I'm moving from Volvo Cars, where I was working before, to Assa Abloy. Okay, when you talk about Volvo, it's like immediately you think, okay, this is the product. There is a car. This is the brand. Assa Abloy is like, what is that? What's Assa Abloy? And those that knew about Assa Abloy, the first thing that asked me is like, it's the key company, right? And like, yeah, it's the key company, but it's much more. And the first question is, what are you going to do in a key company? So it's like, it's hardware based, it's heavy stuff.
What's the AI here? There's no.
Where is the AI here? It's like, really, where is are you going to help them to make the metallic key smarter? What's in it? And then I realized, I saw that it's a big challenge. It's a big challenge. It's because the first couple of months, I was in this learning process of knowing more the organization and realizing that this is a company that started as a hardware company. Yeah, the keys, the locks, the typical and classical product, but it's evolving and it's interested on becoming more and more digital. And part of the challenge for this organization is, okay, if we are entering into the digital area, we also need to be sure that, okay, we are compliant. We have a strong culture of compliance and quality with this side, the hardware side of our business. we need to, and we have to follow that approach when dealing with the digital world. And that's why they look for someone who can help them to or guide them in this process. Okay, what needs to be done and implemented, set in place, if we want to be compliant in that digital area, especially when we talk about AI, because in AI it touches basically everything. And from the Assa Abloy perspective, it touches processes like biometrics. Biometrics is a big thing for a company like Assa Abloy when access systems is in place. The identification systems, the access solutions, so they all require a lot of digital components.
Sorry for this kind of very general question, but then in Assa Abloy, what needs to be done to be compliant?
To follow the rules and follow the framework, the compliance framework. Of course, we need to understand the regulation, what the regulation states. Most of these regulations, and let's say, in order to show compliance with most of these regulations, we also need to identify the available standards that make easier the process of showing compliance.
Right.
I would say that not all the processes or not all the compliance processes have, let's say, a standard, but most of them, or in most of these processes, we can rely on existing standards. So to structure our compliance framework and being able to go to the market with a certified product that at least shows our customers that, okay, we are following the rules when developing this product.
So you're speaking about like ISO standards now to become compliant, or what kind of standards are you thinking about?
ISO standards, harmonized standards from the European perspective. So yeah, these kind of standards, IEC standards, that are here for, let's say, helping also the market, the consumers, to rely on, okay, the quality, or that the products developed and placed in the markets fulfills certain level of legal requirements, not only in terms of quality, or quality in the sense that, okay, how good is the product in terms of construction or in terms of implementation, but how this product can guarantee that we fulfill requirements in terms of privacy, in terms of security, in terms of safety. Those are part of these relevant elements when dealing with compliance and regulations.
And more concretely, what do you need to do? I mean, to ensure that you do, for example, follow the GDPR kind of privacy compliance rules.
Okay, yeah.
Just to take some example, what do you in practice need to do as a company? Just if you were to give some concrete example for companies that wants to be compliant.
Yeah, the first step is to look externally what are the regulations applicable depending on the market. Because every market or every region might have or pose different type of requirements, different type of obligations. So the first thing is to identify what are the relevant regulations in that market. If we are going to place a product in Europe, what we need to do in this case. Second, or let's say as part of this process, we need to go into the details about, okay, from this regulation, what specifically applies for our product. If we are, let's say, relating this to the AI Act, if we are going to provide, or we are going to develop an AI system, and we are going to place it in Europe, we need to see, okay, the AI Act is the relevant regulation to look at. Now we need to see, okay, in this context, what's applicable to us? Are we going to develop a high risk or non-high risk AI system? Depending on that, we identify what are the obligations, what are the requirements from the regulation. Then, once we have identified those, we need to think, okay, what we need to do to show compliance? What are the requirements from the authorities to show compliance? What kind of reports, what kind of documentation, what kind of processes we need to implement?
Because that would be a major thing, right? To make sure that you have documentation. So if you get sued or some kind of audit, then you need to be able to show that, right?
Yeah, exactly. That so that we can show that we are following the regulation, the documentation, the processes, the certificates, and all the stuff. So and to help us in that process, we rely on standards. So, okay, there is a standard, or there are harmonized standards that include, or let's say, operationalize what the regulation states, makes them understandable for R&D, for product and development. Okay, what are the specific things I need to do in order to fulfill what the regulation says? The standard is, let's say, the translation in concrete words, in concrete parameters of what the regulation says. So we follow the standards, we apply the standards, we secure that, okay, we follow all the steps and requirements set in the standard. And then, if the regulation states it, we need to go through a certification process, a third-party conformity assessment. So some external reviewer, notified body, will look at the documents, the processes, all the information we provide them according to the standard to say, okay, you are following the rules, you are compliant, here is the CE mark, or here is the certificate, and then you can place this product in the market. But besides, let's say, this process related to placing the product in the market, we also need to support the organization on understanding the regulation. We need to secure that everyone within the organization understands what they need, what they have to do, why they have to do it. We need also to make things easy, practical, understandable for them. So if we identify in the regulation or in the standard, okay, we need, for example, coming back to the AIAW, prohibited practices.
What the
prohibited practices?
Prohibited, yeah.
The prohibited practices. Yeah, you can read the text and say, okay, there are eight types of prohibited practices, and someone will read it and will say, yeah, but how can I interpret this when I'm developing something? So we need to help the organization to learn that knowledge and prepare some material, document, checklist, at least something that can be concretely
how do you
used
do that
by
is that a role that you have for Assa Abloy, or is it someone else through the standards that can do that, or how do you get this kind of concrete help with the checklist or something else to do this?
Some cases it's part of my work to start drafting this. We can also take a look at official material published, for example, by the European Commission. So how to land this in concrete stuff.
Do you think they are useful?
The material provided to the organization is useful.
From the EU Commission.
From the EU Commission, I think that it's a good intention. They have a good intention.
Absolutely, no question there. But
I cannot question the intention of that kind of material. But from my perspective, it's like they miss the point of making things accessible for non-legal experts. So, for example, when we talk about prohibited practices, besides what was stated in the regulation, they also published later on the guidelines.
Right.
Guidelines to identify prohibited practices. And if I'm not wrong, it was 108 pages that was supposed to help you on understanding what is a prohibited practice. That's not useful. That's not concrete stuff. So when I approach the people in the organization, I say, okay, here is the guideline. Who has read this guideline? One or two guys in a team of 20. How much did you understand? Nothing, because it wasn't written in not in a normal language, in a simple language. So my job was to take that material and try to make it understandable and accessible for people that are not dealing daily with this type of material.
Sounds like something that AI could potentially help with, to read through the 180 pages and try to summarize somehow. But
it's always important the human over the side. You cannot rely only on the interpretation of the AI.
So if you were to, since you're an expert in this as well, and I think a lot of companies want to feel that at least minimize the risk of being sued and have to pay a fine, And I guess you agree that, being compliant is always a risk game. I mean, you can never be 100% compliant, or would you agree with that? It's always a risk that you get fined, right?
Yeah, but the work is to be compliant, always compliant. It's the aim.
But do you think anyone can be 100% compliant with zero risk of getting fined?
We can do our best, and we can get closer to. I would say I remember this level of the reliability levels on the networks is 5 nines, the 99.9% of the times you are successful with it. I would say that not 100%, but there is a minimum risk, and I would say that the advantage of let's say having the standards and the advantage of having regulation and standards is that the standards will provide you this guide to make things closer to being compliant with what the regulation states.
I mean, the standards help and certification helps, right?
Yeah.
But still, I mean, for a normal company, perhaps, I mean, you are extra good in Assa Abloy, but for normal companies, they need to at least, I mean, they can never be sure, right? They need to at least have some kind of risk management, I would say, that you say, we can't be 100% sure if this is high risk or not, according to AIAW, but we think this is the level that we should end up with. And you never know until it actually goes to court properly, right? So, I mean, you can never be sure, but you have to do the best you can, of course. But if you really want to be 100% sure, you should never deploy anything, right?
It's like applying the principle of on cybersecurity. Yes. What's the best way to be 100% cyber secure? Okay,
pull the plug. Yeah,
exactly. That's the principle.
But I was thinking a little bit like you were onto this quite well. So a lot of the stuff we do now, it's regulation and compliance, and it's even a legal documents to some degree, and you have guidelines, which is even more legal text. And then you get to the point where I think you quite excellent point out that it becomes not really useful because it's really hard to interpret. I think one of the key questions now is, if we want to be compliant with AI, who should we look at as our target audience or target person who really needs to understand and work with these topics? And my take on this is very much that one of the key challenges is like we need to take this away from the legal arena and make it into the fundamental compliance by design discussion that you have as a product owner building something. So you really need to flip it from the legal perspective into, okay, when we engineer stuff, when we build stuff, what do I need to do practically as part of my life cycle to manage this risk and also to validate that I'm working towards a compliance path. So I think this is the main problem. I want to understand how you see this. That we have a legal text and we have a regulations, and it's not useful until we get it into the hands of the people actually building stuff. And they should understand it.
And exactly, well, that's one of the key points. I would say that it's one of the most important things. It's like the people actually in the field, the people developing, the people working with the staff understand what are the implications of what the regulation states. But if they get let's say if they get this close contact with and they embrace the regulation in some way, if they incorporate it in the processes and in the way of working, like you say, the compliance by design, compliance by default, all these principles about privacy, trustworthiness, and all this stuff needs to be landed in concrete ways, and needs to be, I would say, embraced by those actually developing the technology, actually providing taking the role on the regulation.
Yeah, but let's stay here, because I think this is if we zoom out of into this compliance problem. If I go into a bank, and now I'm the product owner, I'm thinking about building a system. It has some AI in it, it has some data in it. All of a sudden now, the first question is how many compliance directives, not only AIAW, but is it 1, is it 2, is it 10? So then you come to the next topic. When we do frameworks now, should we do one framework that works a little bit different for each and every regulation, or do I fundamentally need to flip it into the fundamental use case lifecycle and having the engineering process as the core sort of guardrail that we now want to look at? Okay, in the ideation phase, you have a step to check which compliance regulations applies in your case. In the prototype stage, how can you fail fast? What I'm saying is I think there is how to do that, as Anders says. You need to at some point really take the headroom of the developer or the product owner and look at their process and understanding how they should now incorporate compliance tasks as part of their life cycle.
So how do you do that?
I can speak from let's say the experience we have in Assa Abloy. There is an internal process we manage, a framework for all the product development activities that we carry out in the organization, and this framework identifies steps with responsible stakeholders. So it goes from, let's say, the ideation phase to the post-market monitoring, that it's integrated to, let's say, the life cycle of a product.
Yes, exactly like this.
We are in the process of updating this framework, because it was, in the beginning, was mainly focused on, let's say, hardware stuff, and how to incorporate this compliance by design in different stages of this framework. But it was structured in a way that, okay, the main focus or the main customer for this was the product development area.
Yeah.
So how to incorporate these different stages, different gateways in the process to evaluate and assess the compliance requirements associated to those phases. and part of the work we are developing now with the compliance team is how to integrate this digital compliance part.
Exactly.
Hardware, we are okay with that. But how to integrate data regulation, cyber resilience act regulation, artificial intelligence regulation in this context and in the process development.
So how do you do that in Assa Abloy? Do you literally write the documents? Do you have upskilling? What do you do?
It's a kind of WASP operation. So with multiple approaches. So of course we need to document stuff. So we are creating the typical stuff, the documents, the guidelines, and the material. But we are also approaching the community of our product developers with different process of training and let's say information and training, so they can embrace and they can own the compliance as part of the development process. It requires also the development of different type of tools that make them able to develop some of these assessment processes related to compliance, so that they can do some assessments by their own. So we need to provide them with the tools, the material, the checklist, the information. So it comes in different.
And that's something ways. You develop in-house then?
There are some things where we rely on external tools. There are some other tools that we are developing in-house. And this is I have to say, this is work in progress. So we are in this journey right now.
We're in exactly the same journey with Scania, and the core question becomes, if you take the compliance by design area, you want to understand how can I assess something and understand risks early to fail fast, or classify and not do it. And then it comes to the fundamental, we go to deploy, and what are the certifications we need to do now. Yeah. And the main challenge, and I think it's similar as Assa Abloy and Scania when it's these large companies, is that in the end it needs to go beyond guidelines. We need to in a way build a data engineering or an engineering experience where the life cycle is some way checked and monitored, and so we can scale this as a self-service tool. So first of all, it can't be documentation. Secondly, it cannot be documentation. Not if you want to scale it on a large scale, you need to take it away from.
Of course, you have to have documentation.
You need to have documentation, but what I'm trying to say is, if you listen carefully, is that when we are doing it in such a way that we are producing a lot of manual work to get this work done, or when when the compliance team is supposed to work with every single product developer, we get bottlenecks. It will be very costly to get this off the ground. So how to sort of create self-service ideas around this that allows them to do assessments and do the assessment in a correct way, and then be able to print their own documentation, so to speak, out of this.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit like, how can the team be self-reliant as far as possible around the compliance topics?
and empower the product developers and the product owners on these, let's say, compliance related tasks. That will reduce the impact on let's say the time to the market, and will also reduce the potential bottlenecks, as you mentioned, when developing a product. I should mention a previous experience I had when working at Volvo Cars. At that time, that was like 2-3 years ago. It came this boom about generative AI and all this stuff, and there was a need for starting governing and controlling what's going on within the organization about the generative AI. And one of the ideas, and actually was implemented, and yesterday I realized that the process still going on, or it continues, is that it was decided to create a generative AI committee. A committee with people from regulatory affairs, from legal, from compliance, from data management, that had regular meetings to evaluate and assess different business cases or use cases implemented within the organization.
Is a committee the right way to do it?
I would say, based on the experience I have after 2 or 3 years, it's not the best way.
No, it doesn't scale well.
But yeah, exactly. But
you need to start somewhere, maybe.
But yes, you need to start somewhere, and at least try to offer a solution too. Probably it's not the best. It's not the optimal.
I mean, the challenge is, of course, when you get everything through a committee, it becomes a massive bottleneck, right?
Yeah, and it's not compliance by design then.
No, it's not. Yeah,
but then gradually the process was improved by implementing some checklists, some type of internal tools to try to take some of these compliance decisions, or the evaluation or the assessment of some of the products closer to those developing the product. So making that just those critical and probably known or really complex cases to be escalated to the committee.
But there's we need to go the Elon Musk story here soon.
Yes,
because
I write it down.
Because I really think what is the problem is when we look at the compliance and regulatory as a side part, and not as a fundamental definition of done in your engineering process. So if you can get compliance by design, and you can have these things as part of, when I'm producing a new car, or if I'm changing the headlights of the car, it's a definition of done that something should be checked or certified that I can use this component. And so I think this is where we need to go a lot more deeper into the fundamental, what is your engineering life cycle, and ultimately here understand how we can do each part just in time and not like an afterthought or like that. I mean, like that's you can take this story quite well.
I will go there shortly, but I'd just like to try out a theory of mine to you. I mean, where I work and have worked, if you actually can define the process properly, if you can bring compliance by design to the people actually building it, and just do the Sherlock Holmes method. A Sherlock Holmes method meaning, if you have a complicated problem like being compliant, if you just break it down into sufficiently small pieces, everything becomes easy. So I think, and I've seen, and I know it can work if you want, for example, to be GDPR or AI compliant. If you just break it down to sufficiently small questions that is clearly described, and you have a checklist, and you have documentation, and you do the risk analysis that you have to do, then more or less anyone can do it. Would you agree with that?
Yes, and actually what I would say, or let's say the bet we have, is that The bet we have is that the people developing the products can, independently of the implementation of these tools that will be useful and will help in the process of, let's say, evaluating and assessing the compliance of, that they by default, by their own knowledge and, let's say, feeling and understanding, interpret that the values guiding the organization and even the values guiding that person as professional engineer can be reflected in the product we are developing. It's understanding that, okay, if we have clear ethical understanding about, okay, what's wrong and what is right, it should be by default incorporated in everything we do. But it's a kind of philosophical.
No, but I can relate to that. Let's say something, but I really want to latch on to that because I think you're on the right path.
What I'm trying to say is it's a very stigma connected area with being compliant, and I don't think it needs to be.
No, exactly.
I think we actually, if we remove the stigma and say, actually, it's easy to become compliant if you just know how to do it, then the question is really, how can we know how to do it? And if you break down that problem into sufficiently small pieces in Sherlock Holmes style, then actually it is easy to work with personal data or work with AI. It's not really a problem to do that if you just know how to document it properly, do the risk analysis, do the classification, etc. Right? Would you agree with that? So
yeah, I agree. And the idea, let's say the utopian perspective or way of thinking would be probably we wouldn't need to have all this documentation and all these controls and guardrails if everyone knew, okay, the distinction between what's good, what's right, what is okay, what is not okay, and we can develop and let's say reflect in everything we do these high-level principles that we have developed.
I really want to have feedback now on a thesis, how to actually go in exactly this direction, using slightly different words. But we've been working at Scania. We're looking into a collaboration with the researchers at RISE to understand how to build a test evaluation facility. So Scania is thinking carefully, do we need to build our own internal methods, how to scale this out in the European markets? And we took the approach with the RISE researchers that, first of all, we are doing compliance as a way to guide companies to be more risk conscious in relation to AI or whatever it is.
That's a good point.
So the compliance is not the end game. The compliance is there because we clearly are not risk conscious in the stuff we do. So then we took an approach. So if we look at this as from a life cycle perspective, and then we started to look at, okay, what are the dimensionalities we need to look at to assess and validate risk in an AI compound system? And then we started to break this down into, okay, if we want to assess an AI system, what are you have all the guidelines, but if you think about it from a system perspective, what are the risk vectors? And coincidentally then, the risk vectors of building an AI compound system is also the value vectors, all the things and features you need to figure out. So we looked at sort of, okay, the one obvious risk vector is the model itself. Another risk vector is the data. Yeah. A third risk vector is the UX, that you have a stupid UX that makes people go wrong. A fourth one is the system integration and system part. So all of a sudden now we are starting to break down into actually a very, very good practice to be value and risk conscious in your system development. And the risk vectors highlights core dimensionality of building a sound system. It's nothing else, right? Yeah. So in this sense, now we can get it to very small compartments, and then we can say, how will we assess the model risk? How we will assess the data risk? And then here comes the standards and all this, exactly the same thing. So if you break it down in sufficiently small pieces, and you have and the key point is to have a framework here. Let's call it, we call it risk vectors. We look at an AI compound system, and all of a sudden it's a decomposition topic, and it's actually, if I take a look at, okay, those dimensions that are now looked at, the risk vectors, they're actually very, very good vectors that look at the value and how to build a usable system. So it's the same question you want to ask: what's the right UX and what is a risky UX? What's the right system integration that is robust and what is the risk in this? It's two sides of the same coin, and you can go to a good practice, and all of a sudden now you can get it by design. And I think if you get clear on this, now you can take a step. How can I assess this? If you don't know what you're assessing, how the fuck will you do self-services on it? So I don't think you need to go best practice first, and then And actually, do you agree? I'm trying to build.
And actually, trying to connect you took two opinions or two ideas. When we take a look at these standards and the way they are structured, at least in the field of AI, they are trying to break down the problem. They are trying to take, of course, there is this risk consciousness or risk awareness perspective when developing the standard, but they are also trying to break down, and this is a good point. They are trying to break down the analysis of an AI system in different components. That's why they are trying to develop a standard on data quality and data management and cybersecurity and trustworthiness on and quality management. So they are breaking down the problem, and in the goal or the aim at when developing these standards and when being ready with these standards is that, as Anders has mentioned, the idea is that it will be super simple just by following this, let's say, structured way of breaking down the problem, following these small pieces, integrating them, and being able to show compliance in the near future. Then being able to identify, okay, I have broken down the problem or the potential risks represented by an AI system that I'm developing. I'm assessing the different vectors you have mentioned, and being able to say, okay, I'm okay, these are fine, we are compliant.
But here, you're triggering me, sorry for jumping in. Isn't this part of the problem then? Why, if we only have legal people working on this and trying to explain this, we now have a massive effort of translating that into real risk vectors for building systems and all that. It would be so much more helpful if the holistic engineering understanding was there from the beginning. So when the guidelines comes out, it's not 108 pages of legal text, but it's something that fits in a simple engineering context, alpha assessment, beta assessment, whatever. You see what I mean? This whole flipping to something useful or adoptable.
Perhaps we can phrase it as like a general question here. I think we, as most companies, consider being compliant is a complicated process. So I guess the question here then is, how can we make the process of becoming compliant easier? And I've seen frameworks that makes it easier. So I know it can be done, but many companies, and I think most companies, have not. And what do you think? How can we make it easier for companies to become compliant?
I think it's about massification. It's about communication. It's about sharing and working and not reinventing the wheel. Because the solutions are there, and the potential to make things easier for the organizations are there. But I think that one of the challenges.
What do you mean it's there? I mean, do you really think there is a clear process today to make a new organization or some company to become compliant with AIAW or GDPR or something else?
Just following the standards. Yeah, I'm sure that following the standards, when they are structured, they will be the key to be compliant and make.
But if you take AIAW, is there really a good standard that make it easy to become compliant with AIAW today?
If you decompose it, there are standards on data. There are standards on data quality management. There are standards on cybersecurity, etc., etc. So the problem is they're all over the place, and you need to now collect them and understand which standards applies.
But I would say that this is one of the first times, or the first time where the Commission, if we talk about the European regulation, tries to connect the release of a new regulation with concrete elements connected to the implementation of the, let's say, the certification of this by developing standards. That was one, for example, that was one of the mistakes that we have identified when GDPR was released. It was just a legal component.
Yeah.
And there was no way to interpret or to operationalize the principles.
But I must say,
GDPR.
I haven't seen a clear standard about how to become AI Act compliant. Would you say that they have? I mean, so the guidelines for the GPAI, I mean, they are horrible.
The guidelines, yeah, I totally agree. The guidelines are not there. But I'm involved. The standards are currently under development.
Yeah,
we're going in this direction.
Shouldn't they have done that before enacting the law?
That's the tricky one.
That's the tricky part. But usually,
imagine for the company then 10 times trickier. They have a new law. They have to be compliant with it, but you don't know how.
Yeah, consultants do.
They say they do.
What annoys me is that it simply feeds consultants and feeds. The problem is that now there are 50 guys in Scania doing this, and there's another 50 guys doing exactly the same work at Assa Abloy, and there's another 50 guys doing exactly the same work at Ericsson. And in the end, they would all be better off if we could have a standardizing body, or if we could organize this. So I can understand that everything is not perfect, but you need to have a implementation, operationalization story. It needs to be much sharper. We have the AIAW, of course. It goes in this direction, but it's too loose, right? So imagine if you took the guideline and as part of the enactment of the law, these bodies that work through the standards were there. They're not. We are now muddling through we understand we need them, but they're not there as a design implementation. There's no budget for it. There's no...
But perhaps you can give an example. I mean, you mentioned the harmonized standards. If you were to just describe it, what is that and how do they work?
Okay, the harmonized standards are basically the documents that will make operational or that will operationalize the implementation of the AI Act. So they try to offer a, let's say, simple translation of what are the principles stated in the AI Act and make them understandable for those companies interested on be compliant with what the regulation states.
And they are still under development,
They are under development.
So there are no clear standards today for being compliant, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, there is no. And there is some deadlines that needs to be fulfilled in order to be compliant. The aim is that be ready with the standards before August 2026. So that's next year.
And here's the problem. If you have made a package when you enacted the law that the harmonized standards were part of the package, it would have made more sense.
It would have been so much more. And you should even have the standards like 2 years before it became enacted, so you had a chance to be compliant in advance.
It's exactly not until you have the harmonized standards that you can pressure cook and pressure test the regulation.
But the challenge here is how the regulatory framework is structured. Because to be, let's say, to officially start working on a harmonized standard,
you need to have a working document that
there should be a standardization request prepared by the Commission, and that's connected to the existence of a regulatory framework that makes it or that kicks out the activity.
So you're highlighting something appropriate. There's a due process. Yeah. There's a due process with a very gated step that it's, I mean, like, so in a sense, you need to respect the due process, that you need to have that, you need to lock that away, you need to have a memorandum signed here. Now we can lock the next sequence. Yeah. The problem, I think, is then to enforce a law before the actual thing is not really sharp. But that's actually how it works, I guess, in most, I don't know.
And one can argue that, the implementation or the need for the implementation of standards, according to the AI Act, will be needed after or from 2026, August 2026. Even though that the AI Act was enacted and was published last year, it has set some timeline
when you
when
some
the,
part of the AI Act is already enforced,
Yeah,
right?
what
So
it's-
it's
what is
August
really-
next year is some part of it, but some other parts are already enacted.
yeah, what it's enacted is related to AI literacy.
Yeah.
What are the prohibited practices?
Can we just go there? Because I think the AI literacy part, and we're jumping all around now, I feel, but anyway, I think the AI literacy is something that a lot of people don't realize. And I've heard multiple stories on this, so having an expert here is interesting. But in short, I guess AI literacy mean that the company should have, and they're enforced by the law, and it's already in place today, so any company should have plans in place to make the employees AI literate. But does it play for everyone? Is it just the provider of AI models, or is it for also consumers of AI models?
Providers and deployers.
Yeah.
So those providing and deployer must
for
be aware
intern-
of the challenges.
So
and-
if you're an internal deployer of an AI model for just employees, you're not required to have AI
you
literacy?
are.
you are,
you
are.
So then it
as
means
long as-
basically any kind of company that use AI
Of
is
of a certain
compliant.
size. Of a certain size.
No. Or what is the requirement? When do you have to be?
The idea in this case, it's quite broad. And once I was speaking with someone from the commission, and she said, actually, the purpose is to make it broad enough so the organizations can interpret it and take it more as an invitation to start activating or triggering some training actions within the organizations about AI, the challenges, the risks, the potentialities of this technology, rather than setting, let's say, like a strong framework about what should be done. But the requirement is quite broad. Is for deployers and providers that they must ensure that the employees and actually the whole organization at different levels must be aware about AI, the potentialities, the challenges, the potential risk with this technology, and that's really broad. It can go from a tutorial about what are the prohibited practices, and an explanation of what's AI and what's the AI.
But once again, now you're describing how it should be done. But right, this should be a checklist somewhere. Okay, we know it's a law. You can get fined today as a company if you do not follow this law, and you can get fined today. And people don't know, how do I fulfill the requirement to provide AI literacy?
And there is no standard.
There's
And
no
there is
standard.
and there is no
Isn't
checklist.
this
and there
absurd
is-
in some way?
It's
It's a law that no one knows how to be compliant with. And it's just a small part of the AI Act.
it's an open requirement. Yeah, I agree. I agree. And that was part of my conversation with this person from the commission. It was, but okay. I asked her, what is the body of knowledge or the structure, the content that this AI literacy program should
Could you
should
send
have?
an email saying this is what AI means, and then you're AI literate? I mean, what does it really mean to make employee?
It's quite open. It's
It is,
quite open.
right?
It's quite open. I agree with that. And we are in the company. We're in the process of defining our own body of knowledge. What are the, let's say, the key skill sets, the key areas that should be, let's say, part of the basic knowledge on AI for different levels or different roles within the organization. But it's up to us. It's us. It's Assa Abloy. It's the DCF framework that has decided, okay, probably we should cover these areas, but nobody's guiding us. Nobody's telling us this is the content list for this AI literacy program.
I'd love to come back to the Elon Musk story here shortly, but before that, perhaps you can just close that kind of question about how to make the compliant process easier and somehow. I mean, we know there is standards lacking. We would love to have it. We want to have like clear, broken down checklists, make it easy for anyone without having legal expertise knowledge to still be able to do it and to have compliance by design, but we don't have it. What would be your thoughts about, how can we make the compliant process easier given the situation we have today? What would be your recommendation to a company or to authorities like the Swedish, EMA authority, or Authority for Privacy Protection, or whatever they call it in English? I mean, how can we make it easier for companies?
I think that the answer is not simple, but probably the answer is also simplicity. In the sense that perhaps the most urgent thing about the regulation and what should be regulated, what's, let's say, the key target of the AI regulation is high risk AI systems. And I think that not all the companies in Sweden, not all the companies worldwide are aiming or are implementing this type of solutions.
But just knowing that, it's a risk the company takes. Probably like a few percentage of companies is actually going to be categorized as high risk. But if you don't know it, then you still have a super high risk of being fined, and you don't know about it, right?
But in this case, I think that one point is probably try to reflect on what are the let's say the guiding principles behind the AI Act. This respect for fundamental rights is like the guiding principle, is the philosophy behind the text.
Yeah. So
these principles about human oversight, about trustworthiness, about
what should a company do? I think the best thing is to employ a person like yourself to a company,
but
right?
also to collaborate. And actually, that's one of the things I would like to propose for the community, because something that we see is that all the companies are facing the same challenge.
Yes,
and we
everyone.
Exactly. And the problem is that some of them have resources, some of them lack of these resources. We face the same challenge, but we can do two things. One is to develop this work in separate silos, separate tracks, and basically every one of us reinvent the wheel and try to find ourselves, okay, what's the best approach? What's the best solution to face this challenge? Or we can try to work together, face and share some of our best practices, share some knowledge, and work as a community, trying to develop some, let's say, at least a basic baseline framework that help us to be compliant and to understand what are the challenges linked to the compliance area in AI. I've been in different spaces, in standardization, in CIS. I've been also talking to Combient, this organization, about probably integrating these groups, even in Technique for Etagen. We have been talking about, okay, why not creating a joint group of interested companies, trying to work together on the definition of the interpretation of this framework for compliance.
We have authorities that have responsibility to assess this and do that, and we have the Swedish Authority for Privacy Protection, or whatever they're called, IMI. Why shouldn't they provide the guidelines? Why shouldn't they have a process? They're speaking about the sandboxes and whatnot that should be provided. Do you think that's a good way forward, or how should we do it?
Can I? You answer first, but I have a very strong opinion here that actually there is some clarity here that we are simply not following. But can I answer first? Because we had Petra Dalunde here as a guest here, and she's the director for the TEF, the RISE TEF, Testing and Evaluation Facilities. And then she's working as a co-director for the new AI Factory, looking more at the small, medium enterprise, how they could use that. And here they're talking about compliance and design. And with them connected, we have EMU and a couple of other actors. So Petra actually has a very, very nice picture of how all this works on the different initiatives around these areas. From an EU perspective, like basically, there's so much going on in EU that the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing, and But if you're really careful around this, the TEF has a Swedish idea of bringing this together, and they are looking into these directions. And then on top of these, the AI Factory and the TEF, you have the engagement with the AI-Verkstan for public sector, right? And we did a collaboration. We took the work we done with Scania and with RISE and the TEF, and me and Petra went and talked to Danne, the guy running, the program manager for the AI Factory or AI-Verkstan. So I think there even if it's unstructured, as long as those key groups that has got some sort of mandate around this, if they can build a centrum building or something like that around safe and smooth AI, this is the perfect start. Then you have something that you could grow into open innovation around this. Because what we are talking about here is fundamentally open innovation. Scania wants to do stuff, you want to do stuff, everybody's investing money in it. If we all pool our resources, it's not only about we're getting more for the money, we're getting to one message, which is more important in my opinion. So what I'm saying is, the problem is that we have a TEF and we have people who are supposed to work on these areas, but we don't know about it. We are not finding an arena yet.
There is probably one of the problems is it's more about sharing and communicating this kind of experiences, and
but you need to design this arena for it to work. Someone needs to, and it's work to create these meetings, to from the meetings document stuff. But it's all there if you want to do it.
Yeah, it's more about who wants to take the initiative and try to
who can
to put them together.
You can't. Scania can't. TEF can. AI Factory can. AI Verkstaden can potentially.
But someone need to have the ownership of this.
Yes.
Someone need to be assigned to say, now you need to make this happen. You don't need to do all the work, but you need to make sure that you have the right arena, the right authorities, and to really drive it, right?
And there is a need, because there is a need, and part of the message I'm delivering with sharing this discussion with CIS and Combien and all the other authorities or groups is that if we wait until the standards are ready, probably it's too late.
Yeah.
We are missing an opportunity.
Actually, we want to influence them so they make sense, if I'm flipping it.
And there is a need also for, let's say, developing something where we can integrate our experiences and knowledge.
Yes.
And there is also the potential of collaboration between the Swedish companies and why not the Nordics that share a lot of
I'm going to put you in contact with people in Scania immediately after this,
because that would be great. We are discussing on this, and
because the reality is that the TEF or the myndigheter, they cannot develop this without collaboration with the real companies. Because it's not until you hit Scania or Assa Abloy that how will this work in practice for us? How will we interpret this? So that's why they can't do it themselves either.
And one of the problems is that if we rely only on the authorities doing this, there is a risk.
Yes.
And the risk is that they will offer an answer to the problem that is tailored to their view about the situation, how this situation should be solved. And usually that's disconnected. Sorry to say this, but usually, or most of the times, that's disconnected from the reality. That's what happened with these guidelines. Yeah. That's what happened with the prohibited practices.
This is why this will never work.
We haven't been engaged in that.
I get goosebumps because, you said from the beginning, in the starting point, how do we open up the balancing act between control and autonomy? Or control and innovation, and that's why we need to do it together.
I'm sorry to interrupt these very engaged discussions about the very, very exciting topic of regulations.
Did you hear that Henrik said goosebumps?
Yes.
It's been 2 seasons last time he said goosebumps.
So we normally take a small break in the middle of the discussion to speak about some AI news.
It's time for AI news. Brought to you by AIAW Podcast.
So with that, we usually take a few minutes to just reflect on the latest week's newsworthy stories. I actually have some regulation kind of AI news that I could share. But before that, Luis, do you have any news AI related or otherwise that you'd like to share?
Probably something I would like to deep more is on what's going on with Oracle. That's like it seems to be the new NVIDIA. Yeah, the new NVIDIA in the context. It's like cloud is
Larry is now richer than Elon Musk.
Exactly.
It's just, what?
40% in how many days?
1 day, right?
In 1 day.
In 1 day.
I would like to get that formula.
That's insane.
But what triggered it? Do we know? What was the trigger? I don't know.
Agreements that the agreements. The agreements that like they signed with
Stargate,
blah
blah blah.
Yeah, it's insane. I mean, Oracle is going well for them, but this I don't think I've seen a 40% jump on a huge company like Oracle in 1 day before. It's insane.
It's insane.
I think it will jump back though. What do you think?
What's the substance? Is there a substance? Is 40% jump? No.
Yeah, probably there will be some rollback, but.
Well,
40 to 20.
But the whole what triggered it was that there was some more clarity on Oracle's involvement in Stargate, and therefore people could extrapolate. They're going to get a lot of work from this. There's a lot of money going Oracle way now. Isn't that what this is sort of indicating, that this is how people interpret the whole thing?
I think they published some kind of results as well or something, that they had some really positive results of some Q2 report or something, and that's what's triggered it. But
Yeah, and then the announcement of this agreement with OpenAI and the collaboration with OpenAI, that has opened the door for, let's say, involving more the cloud concept on the development of AI. It's not, because it seems that now the development is not only relying on processors and let's say capacity of processing capacity, but it's also how much we can rely on the use of the cloud for leveraging the results of AI.
Yeah, I don't think he actually is the richest man anymore. I just have to look it up. But he was for a brief period of time, and then Elon Musk took it back. But
all right, other news.
But still rich.
Yes, other news.
Yes. So basically, they are integrating cloud technologies now into their product portfolio, so they can. Companies can.
But they're really good in building data centers, apparently. And even Elon Musk deployed Oracle before.
CRM company in the world.
CRM company?
Yeah. All the biggest cloud provider for CRM. And things like
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Cloud.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I think that this is the Oracle Cloud is coming up. So that's why. But keep in mind, it's 40% because they have said that they would deliver quite a lot of. You see here the forecast, OCR revenue growth of 77% to 18 billion this fiscal year. So if they miss that, it's going to be double down. So, but I think it's going good for them. Cool. We actually spoke about Oracle many times on the sleeping giant.
I bagged them. I said no, they're dead, and you said no, they're a sleeping giant. You've been pulling that story all the whole time.
But I didn't invest.
I give you credit for that.
Did you invest in it before? No, or did I?
I invested in Novo Nordisk instead.
Oh, good luck. I'm laughing, but sorry for that.
That was some cowboy style investment. Yes.
They're coming back up, I think.
They will.
All right, more news.
Yeah, something, or should I?
I mean, we need to say something, and maybe you have some of the data as well, Goran. There is some more budget proposition stuff that came out this week. Ulf Kristersson are starting to articulate more details that, if you go back to the Swedish AI strategy, we don't have an AI strategy. I think the most important stuff is to see money being dedicated. I think it's even more important than a fluffy document. So when I see now that the AIAW, this is the collaboration around how to build practices and tooling in public sector, led by Skatteverket and some else. They got more clarity on money to continue on that journey.
And it's not bad money.
That was not bad money.
I had to look it up here, but it's like $480 million in 1 year.
It was like 100 million per year or something for a 5-year period, or I can't remember.
Now it's 479 in 26, and then 500 million each coming year up till.
Was it 500?
Yes, so it's a lot. It's basically 500 million per year.
But because Ulf explicitly talked about AI Factory and what they want to do with AI Factory. That's Mimer, that's together with Linköping, and that is Petra, and then explicitly on another budget account towards AI Verkstan. So it's not like they are focusing on one and killing the other. Both are getting a shared, a
I looked it up here. I can give you a quick breakdown of what they did. So it's basically 500 million per year until and including 2030. And then the Försäkringskassan and Skatteverket, they already had the assignment of building this kind of AI verkstad.
But now these guys are getting specific AI money earmarked to do that service.
Yes.
So that's really important that it's visible for AI.
And then it's the AI fabric, the Mimer thing, and then it's also extra money for IMU to build the Sandbox.
Yes.
This is for regulatory purposes.
The Sandbox.
So we'll see if they actually do that properly.
But isn't it interesting? We didn't have the news, but I said IMU, I said AI Factory, I said AI Verkstan. So hint, these guys have the money, and we should come with our.
Yeah, let me just finish here before you spoke too much, Henrik. There is more stuff here. They're also actually digitalizing and making data available from Riksarkivet so they can use for AI training purposes. That's kind of cool.
Yes.
They also give money to
Love gets
and
money.
the Royal Library to build more language models, which are already done. So that's really cool.
Also fjäder i hatten.
It's a big testament to
what he's doing.
To the Royal Library and Louvre and the work they're doing in their AI lab. What else? They also have some Digital Europe project, 100 million per year. It's a lot of money. And also, right. They're going to have like a data steward in like some kind of new function in the government. Basically a data steward, data steward in terms of they had some person that is in the business, so to speak, that can basically evangelize and drive and help guide the work forward also in the government. So really good. I like it.
I don't know how you interpret this, but sometimes I get much more excited when I see real numbers on the table with a clear direction to where it goes than any fluffy document.
This is actually surprisingly good. With clear actions and clear money.
Clear actions and clear money and clear earmark money that can't be used for anything else with clear owners of the money.
Yeah.
Not that small amount of money either.
I think this is the best AI news, or this is way more important than the AI Commission report or the AI strategy. This
because
right
this
here
shows concrete actions, concrete stuff.
And you finally, people who are working on this, like Dan in Skatteverket, they are building on a thesis on how to spend the money, and now here, he needs to get his action plan going. Yeah. This is much more to us, and this leads to action. You need to have the money, you need to have it earmarked, otherwise it doesn't exist. It's just talk. Yeah. I think this is much more important than people understand, because I didn't see the digital strategy. Fuck that,
and also
I want to see this.
The value from a signal point of view, that the government actually put and understands the importance of AI. I think that is also a very good value in itself.
Yeah.
So really good stuff. Let me just finish off with some more legal news as well. And perhaps one of the bigger one was that Anthropic, one of the biggest AI labs that we have, actually made a settlement of $1.5 billion. That's I think it's the biggest settlement of all, at least in AI. So it's a huge settlement. And what they done, they used books for training their models. Now, the point with this is really that the fair use regulation, you probably know this better than me, Luis, but as far as I understand it, the fair use allows certain use of copyright material, but it needs to be of transformative value. And then they have 4 principles for that. And apparently the court found that their use of training a model is transformative, therefore it is actually fair use of the copyrighted material in this case. So that was not what they got fined for. So this is, I think, a really big news. It is okay to train AI models in US on copyrighted material. This, I think, will set a precedent that is really, really big. However, they got fined because they used the copyrighted material and the books from piracy site. So they downloaded the material from sites that didn't have the permission to publish the books. and that was illegal. So then they got the big fine, and they had to pay 3,000 crowns per book, and it was 500,000 books. So then it became $1.5 billion or something.
But it's an interesting twist.
Could have bought the rights for all the books for those money, probably even by the publishing company itself.
They should have used to check them out at Kindle, and that would have been fine.
Yeah. But they knew what they were doing. Right. So
I don't think they would. They thought they were going to get sued on the fundamental copyright thing, because if they knew it was going to play out like this, they could have used a download of those books.
But right now they have also the opportunity to pay for it, right? So they build the company, they build the valuation. So,
but they still, it's a big chunk in their wallet, 1.5 billion.
Wallet. Yeah, there's a lot of other.
They could have bought a lot of CPU or GPUs for $1.5 billion.
They can ask Oracle; they will give you something.
All right. Any more news? Or should
I would like to focus on this a bit, because when you're talking about Sweden and what is happening right now, investment, we cannot miss the spherical AI, the new. The new company, basically, that Wallenberg Investment together with AstraZeneca, Ericsson, Saab, and SAB are doing to operate new sovereign AI supercomputers. that will transform and prepare the country-leading industries in the age of AI. So it's a new supercomputer cluster in Sweden with, I believe it was 1,152 interconnected advanced GPUs from NVIDIA, DGX SuperPods. So I think that we have Mimer, we have Brasilius, we have a couple. This is quite a lot.
But how can we understand spherical? Because this is now completely in a private sphere, in a private sector, where these companies decide exactly what they want to do with this.
Well,
right?
I mean, if you look at it, the key word here is sovereign AI supercomputer.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. We have been talking about this, that basically organization more and more will go into hybrid and on-prem solutions, because if you're doing especially keep in mind Ericsson, AstraZeneca, if they do R&D, right, is it safe to do R&D on cloud, on American cloud providers and etc., where AI, OpenAI, all of these other things, where one patent is actually like worth billions and billions and billions? So I think this makes sense. How do you protect that this cluster of companies that have a joint interested party as an investor
and a common shared owner?
Yeah, exactly. So I think it makes sense, and more companies are doing this. Actually, to tie to this and to prove it that it's right, why do you think ASML bought Mistral?
They didn't buy it, but they invested.
But they buy it. They're the biggest shareholder. They have 11% of the entire organization, right?
So they don't have a majority in any way, but they invested it. They invested in them. They didn't buy them.
But why?
Oh yeah, that's. I mean, yeah.
So AWS now has 11% share.
11 shares. So they are the majority. What is called owners of that. Yeah?
And just to give some background, ASML is actually a super important company. This is the company that makes the machine to make AI chips.
Yes.
So they are the sole provider of the lithography machines that TSML in Taiwan is using to build NVIDIA chips.
So this is the Dutch company behind the whole miracle that has the absolutely unique capability that no one else can do.
Yeah. So the one of the theories is that pretty much it makes sense as well. They have invested in that because they want to utilize Mistral for their R&D purposes, for their AI workloads, everything that they build internally. Also, they need to secure what is called AI compute. Right, and again we are coming to the same word, sovereignty, which means that it's a French company, and ASML is a Dutch company, so it's very near, so they can collaborate and make the best of it. They don't need to outsource and put all of this in the United States or somewhere else. So you see it's becoming like a pattern that more companies.
But are we getting a European sort of superpod here? I mean, like, so the collaboration with ASML below the chipset in terms of competencies, and then Mistral on the LLM is almost like what is happening. Are they looking for more? Is this a conglomerate form?
No, for one, ASML, of course, they made so much money. Now that NVIDIA became the most valuable company in the world, and that is because they're using TSML to build the chips for them, and TSMC is using ASML to have the machines to build that for them. So they made a shitload of money. It's a European company. And then you can, I guess, just guess for why they invested in it. But they do have a lot of money, I think, and I hope it also because they want to build a European vertical here.
Yeah, this is what I'm talking about. Are we looking at the formation of the European vertical?
Yes.
Are we looking at that? I think that is super interesting.
And I have to say something. This is going to be very stupid, but I think that Donald Trump is a king. He finally made Europe great again.
Thank you, Donald.
True.
Thank you, Donald.
Yeah. But it's good, right? He makes America good and he makes Europe great. Who knows? Not going there.
Makes Europe.
Okay.
I love that. That's my T-shirt.
Mega.
Thank you, Donald Trump. Make US good and Europe great.
Yeah.
Mega.
Mega, yeah. Not MAGA, but mega. Yeah.
Sounds better.
Make Europe great again. Mega. We need to have a mega T-shirt.
One final one, very quick one. We have a new unicorn in Sweden. Did you?
Oh yeah.
Read about it?
Klarna.
No, Klarna was actually
Klarna was on the stock exchange now.
Yeah, stock exchange. So they just Flight Radar.
Flight Radar is a new unicorn.
It's a new unicorn. So shout out to Mina.
Mina,
who has
yeah?
been here,
Fantastic.
Fantastic job.
And of course, Lovable as well. But yeah.
we talked about Lovable.
Yeah,
so we know Lovable is.
There's also a unicorn rather recently.
Yeah,
Yes.
but
so 2 unicorns in 2-3 months.
2-3, but it's an interesting one. Klarna made it to the New York Stock Exchange, and they are now. I mean, like now they're they're an American company. They're not a Swedish company in a way, right?
And they went in at 130 billion, I think, dollars, and I think they rose like 30% after 1 day or something.
But they're gonna dip,
sure,
all of them
course,
will dip a
of
bit,
course.
and they will go
Same
up.
as Spotify did.
Yeah,
when they
but
did.
also one of the founders of Klarna invested in a new defense company that is forming in Sweden. Did you see that? 500 million Swedish crowns.
You mean in Helsing or what?
No, Helsinki is a German company. Okay, we are getting into
too much.
But Oliver Molander made a nice post on this, where it's sort of interesting to see that the big, how many companies in Sweden, and Finland has sort of gone this way, and they're surprising a lot. That's sort of in the end.
Yeah,
When we
this AI
hyperscale-
news is going rabbit hole.
Yeah. Let's leave it.
Oh, right. Cool.
Klarna founder launches defense.
Yeah. Defense is going forward very rapidly.
833 million
Wow.
investments to open it.
Yeah.
Flat capital.
Yep. Interesting. Cool. Okay, so let's get back to the interesting discussion and the very engaged discussion that we just had with Luis. And perhaps we should, before we forget, just go to the Elon Musk story and just speak a bit about that. And I can give some background, Luis, and it would be fun to hear. Do you think that the Elon Musk approach to be compliant is a good one? So I'm not sure how familiar you are, but I can give a quick background. But they basically have a very agile approach of becoming compliant. So let's call it the agile compliant process. And just to give it an example of this, normally, if you build a car and you change a water pump or whatnot, then they need to have certification from some kind of external authority to make sure they can put the car on the road, right? Now, normally that takes a lot of time, and you have to submit some documentation, and you have to wait months or weeks or at least or more to get some certification. And that doesn't work for Tesla, who actually updates a car every day. So every car that comes out each day is different from the day before. So how can you make a car compliant when you change so much so rapidly? So what they did, as far as I understand it, is that they send small updates to the oversight committee basically daily with super small changes. Very, very iterative. So instead of saying, we're just going to tweak this water pump to be 1% more efficient, and this is the only change in how it looks, is it still compliant? And then they said this small document to the authority saying, would you agree with this? And then they get basically flooded with these kind of requests, and after a while they realize, is only this small change? That can't really change anything. And then they get a super quick approval, and they become compliant in a very rapid way. What do you think about that? If it's true.
It's agile. I have to admit it's agile. So it's overflowed in
and really makes super small iterations.
But it's looking at compliance in the same way as a continuous release train of code or whatever. So it's the coding mentality. We're not going to have one release per year. We're not going to have 3 releases per year. We have 2-week release cycles. And if you follow the engineering and hardware of Tesla, it's really, really hard to understand what is a 2024 model and a 2025 model, because all of a sudden they've changed stuff like the suspension. So I have a Tesla car, and I've been nerding about this. Even when to buy a car, it's really difficult to understand. So it means that they have a continuous deploy in production cycle also for hardware, exactly the same as we have been used to finding it in software and stuff like that. And therefore, they had to decompose their whole certification process into a simple definition of done. So when you do a production, like an agile cycle has the definition of done when you go to production, and then whatever compliance components for that little thing you've done, they take care of it there and then.
But it goes to the detail. I would say that from what I've listened, it's like, okay, they go to the detail, and they actually, it shows great care for, let's say, the compliance concept, because
I think
even
it's
with
great.
small details, even for small details, they realize that, okay, it's important to report to the authority and say, okay, we are compliant with, yes or not, and then move forward. It's agile instead of waiting for, let's say,
The whole car.
yeah, exactly.
But and because if you is this, they're a software company on wheels. It's literally showing again that they're having a continuous deploy mentality that no one else can copy, because they I mean, like in an automated car, I've never done that before, and it doesn't matter if Volvo says they can do it. They are not. It's not in their DNA to be a software company like this.
But I don't know. In some way, one can say that it keeps some contradiction with what we can see from Elon Musk perspective about the regulation and the authorities. Because from the case you are describing, it might exemplify a good setup of collaboration and good communication with authorities. It's like, okay, you are keeping the regulator as part of your, let's say, confidence loop.
Yeah.
But everybody needs to. I mean, take a step back here. Everybody perceives Elon as a cowboy, and now he's even a crazy cowboy. But if you look at the verticals that he's chosen to compete in, space, rockets, satellites, Neuralink is probably some of the most hardest from a compliance perspective you can think of, right? So and he has not looked at compliance as how do we get compliant as a bureaucratic process. He's taken a hardcore engineering mindset to it and sold it as any other engineering problem. So in SpaceX and all that, it's just a way of looking at engineering and that this is a part of definition of done. And then he has then obviously pushed the authorities because they couldn't deal with it in the beginning, but in the end, he's just following the law. He's in his fucking right to come with any small compliance. If you want to be small, that's his problem. And they need to change. And so he pushed change through with SpaceX. I mean, like the whole space industry.
And this might be also an example of, okay, how we can connect quality with compliance. How these two concepts might go hand in hand. Because what we can see in the interest of Elon Musk is, okay, we are designing technology, we are creating new products, we are innovating, but also trying to offer the best quality possible. At least that's what's the main statement when he's working on several projects he's engaged to. The quality and the innovation are like two things, the two concepts that go hand in hand when the companies he owns are developing products. And now what we can see is a connection between this concept of quality and compliance.
In a good sense, right?
In a good sense.
Yeah.
So this is something that more companies and authorities should adhere to, right?
Yeah, and actually that's that might be the introduction for the topic of regulatory sandboxes.
Yeah.
Because in some way the regulatory sandbox,
segue.
the regulatory sandbox is in a small scale. The implementation of this kind of practice where you have let's say a test scenario.
But let's go there properly.
Yeah.
Okay, so what if we start with that? What is really a regulatory sandbox?
Yeah, I mean, it's a test scenario. It's a space, safe space, where you can deploy. You can develop and deploy certain kind of technology.
What do you mean with deploy in that case?
Yeah,
Because it's no customer user that's going to see it, right?
But it's a control scenario where you can basically, with collaborating in close collaboration with the regulator,
Yes.
test, try out a product or a solution, in the market, and be in contact with
In the market, what do you mean?
Yeah, in a control scenario,
Like
in
like
a real
In a
scenario.
testing scenario.
In a testing scenario.
So it's not in a market, right?
Simulated
market.
like if this was a real market, we simulate this now in a controlled environment.
In a control environment where you can directly
So it's of
ask.
course not for real.
It's not real, but you are in contact with the regulator, and the regulator is in touch with you, is collaborating, is answering your questions, is providing you feedback, information about what are the key considerations to take into account when testing this product in this simulated scenario of operation.
But how do they work in practice? Because I haven't seen at least a clear definition of the process of how it actually works. And if you do get like the proper, we know the Swedish authority for privacy protection have the assignment to actually build out these kind of sandboxes, and we have the TEFs, etc. as well. And it's kind of unclear to me how they really should work. Will you actually have access to a proper authority or privacy protection agent that will review it and basically have free time with that person and basically get a certification in that case?
Not getting the certification, but getting some initial feedback on how this will operate in a real scenario. If there are some considerations that we need to take into account before placing in the real market this kind of solution. So,
but is that really the case? So let's say you have a small startup or something. You want to put a new product on the market. Can you go and potentially for free get guidance?
Access to this regulatory sandbox and get guidance from the authority about, okay, I'm implementing this solution.
So it's a free consultancy for getting compliant. I don't think it is, by the way.
But similar to, in the sense that in this context, you can contact the regulator, ask for, let's say, for input on the operation, what's going on during the operation of this system or this product, and test how this product or the solution behaves in, let's say, in the real context or in a controlled real context, and test and try out what's going on here, what we need to take into account.
Yeah, but I tried, heard a company that tried this, and I basically went to email and said, we want to evaluate this. Can we get some help from you? And they, no way. We are not a consultancy company, and we were not allowed to compete with them. So,
but I think this, I think this is tricky in terms of the ideas how this should work and what in reality it is and not is. I just want to highlight we've had quite deep conversations with this with Petra Dalunde in the TEF, and she painted a quite nice picture which is similar to what you are saying, Luis, but it's a little bit different. So the idea with the TEF as an evaluation facility.
But now we go to TEF.
No.
TEF is different from the
I know.
regulatory.
I want to differentiate. Okay. So Petra is trying to highlight that most cases when they are within the frame, and we can maybe over time have harmonized standards. So when something is clearly within the frame and boundaries of what it's clear cut. This is category 3. We should do this. We should evaluate and test this. Petra's vision is that this is TEF work, how we should test and evaluate, evaluation facility. So in a sense, what maybe a sandbox or a way to test the environment. Her way of interpreting the regulatory sandbox is actually when there is actually quite a lot of legal uncertainty in terms of, is this really a category 3 or 4, or am I really? I don't really know how to interpret the law in this particular case. So this case to me is really hard to judge by the criteria. So her way of describing it is like, it's a little bit like we have the highway, and then we have the regulatory sandbox for the things that is not maybe super clear cut if they fit the highway. Yeah. That's her vision. Nothing exists in real all the way, but that's the idea she has when she's trying to differentiate the regulatory sandbox from what the testing facility should be doing.
Yeah, because in the regulatory sandbox, the idea is also to try to identify potential risks.
And legal uncertainties.
And there is, yeah, exactly. What are the legal uncertainties? And of course, if we look at the AI regulation and the AI Act, if we talk about I'm actually looking at the Article 57 that defines the regulatory sandboxes. Mm-hmm. It states that they should be operational on AI by August 2026. So the authorities, the national authorities,
they need to figure this out.
Yeah, exactly. Need to figure it out and need to work on and ensure that the competent authorities will allocate resources to comply with the requirements of this article. Mm. And the idea here is to provide the controlled environment that fosters innovation and facilitates the development, training, testing, and validation of AI systems for a limited time before they're being placed on the market. So it's
not clear.
There's no question that the intent is good, right?
Yeah,
so the intent is perfect.
The intent is there.
But how are they going to implement this? And I had to look it up as well a bit here, and I think it's actually very accurate what you said. They want to have a discussion with the authority about, what, in some kind of dialogue, collaborative way. So it sounds good. I haven't seen it yet. I don't think it's in place, and that's why the person I'm thinking of got no, and there is no way. But I hope that they can do that, and if they can actually do it. But I think they have to select. You have to submit or apply for getting into this program in some way.
There should be a national authority.
Yeah,
but
the whole application process you highlight is exactly right, because it's no way in hell everybody can go to regulatory sandbox.
They will be overloaded like crazy.
So the trick is here, it's almost like going to hovrätten, right? It's going to be, okay, we have a case now, it's not clear cut. We think there's legal uncertainty here because of this, so we now apply to work through the legal uncertainties. It means that you can fix an amendment to the actual law, and we get a clear-cut confirmation. So this is what Peter is trying to push, that this is hovrätten. The regulatory sandbox is like legal uncertainty that we need to iron out, and then we have a mechanism for that. It should not be for everyone. Everyone should then be serviced by the TEF or whatever. I don't know. Otherwise, they will be overloaded for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the intent, I think, as you say, is clearly good. I just don't see any kind of way of how they should implement it, or who would really be allowed to go through this process.
Yeah,
because everyone should do it. I don't think any company would not love to go through this. Right?
But perhaps one of the concerns from the companies is, okay, how to deal with, for example, the copyright or intellectual property issues when, for example, applying in these regulatory sandboxes and making the solutions to operate in this sandbox. So what type of documentation should be delivered, should be handed in, and how to protect, how to guarantee the protection of intellectual property when being part of this regulatory sandbox.
I think I need an AI approach for this. So the AIAW should be using AI agents to help the companies, perhaps.
But can I, if we are leaving that topic, can I try to set up another topic here on this, which is very close and adjacent? So there is different ideas on how to set up a testing and evaluation facility. So now we're not really talking about assessing documentation, but actually how to assess code or understand the real technology, the real engineering, the real data. And here now there are two lines of thoughts, and I want to hear how Assa Abloy is thinking about that. So imagine you're a built-in model, and you now need to have a formal evaluation of the code, so to speak. So should you then take your code and your system and bring it to an authority and upload it by them? Or do you think needs to be some more of a federative approach, they call it, or like an API, how you can connect in and basically bring the testing to your system? So the core question is, if we want to test and validate code, should we bring the code to the testing facility, or should the testing facility be able to be plugged in to the, so the one is a central approach and one is more of a federative approach, they call it. Have you thought about this? I mean, so now we're going beyond documentation assessment in this way, soft. Now we're going into hardcore looking at the engineering.
Yeah, and what will be the best approach?
Yes. Do we bring the system to the tester, or do we bring the testing mechanism to the system? Do you see what I mean, right? Have you thought about this practically?
It's interesting question, because it might bring some potential risks.
Both ways is tricky.
Yeah, it's tricky. It's tricky, and this is something we need to think about, because it comes with certain risk and challenges. I'm going to move from this side to something that I experienced when I was working for Ericsson and the certification of the base stations.
Good example.
In China, at that time, to certify a product, the authorities requested basically the blueprints of the base station and the antenna and the design. So imagine releasing this type of material to the Chinese authorities. And internally there were concerns about, okay, should we do that and basically reveal all our intellectual property on just to fulfill the compliance requirement? What should we do in this case? Because the idea in this case is basically to evaluate the system by the outcome is generated, not by the, let's say, how this is structured. So up to a certain point, it would be good to evaluate the need for just releasing, or let's say, revealing the code and the mechanisms behind the outcome, or evaluating a system
so
based
coming back
on
to
the
that
outcome of this.
But I guess the challenges here is from a number of dimensions. One is the security aspect. Of course, if you release it to Chinese authorities, it will be highly likely to be copied in some way or form. But if we just take the AI Act and you are potentially classified as high risk, there is also requirements in actually you describing the method of the training and even what the data sources you have used, etc., and being, that could be considered part of the IP, the intellectual property that you do have. Do you think, some companies would really react badly to say that we are going to give away our secrets, what makes our system good? Do you have any thoughts about that?
But in this case, most of the process of certification according to the standards will be based on documentation and sharing documentation.
But it should be shared in a public database as well, right?
The data, the samples.
How it works, what data you used, the method, everything. Why would someone, if a company that is building a commercial, business model on that, why should they give away their secrets?
But it's tricky to think about it, because in one hand, of course, what they are looking for from the compliance perspective is to understand how the system is generating the information, how the system is generating certain output based on.
Of course, and the intent is good
on the data,
but the effects of it is bad, right?
How? How to do it practically? It's really.
And it's also about how to rely on the authorities and the competence and the integrity of the authorities or the notified bodies when delivering this documentation.
But this is why, so when I talk to Petra about this, this is where maybe it's more feasible with a more federative approach, where basically there is something you do, there's a certification service that you bring inside to Scania. So Scania is thinking about, okay, we actually need to look at stuff and find an internal, forget about the compliance. Now it's from a pure risk management point of view. We want to verify and find risks and bias if a system is bad before we release it. So how to build that verification service internally, and potentially then, this is the Scania argument, if this can be built or by harmonized standards to a certain level of quality in a certain way, that if you have verified your system in this way, it's safe. TEF potentially then releases that and use that, and it becomes like a component, like a software component, like you buy in any other software component, that becomes like a something you can buy that you can then use internally in Scania. That would take away the whole thing of sending the whole documentation away or sending something in its way. So it's like rethinking from another perspective, that the test needs to come to the system in order for us not to divulge our IP and all this kind of stuff.
In some way, we'll be basically assessing the system by the output generated.
I don't know.
The system.
When you peel the onion on this, how do you assess the system, right? It's the dimensionality of the data and the data quality. It's the data. The data set are they robust enough, or will they drift? This is one type of test you would do. Another one would be in the model itself. Is it model drift? All these things that you know better than I do. We have, as data scientists, different ways how we test this, and we have done it. We have all done it. The professional data scientists have done this all the time, right? Validity, reliability, whatever we do in order to say what's the problem with the system, how accurate is it, and stuff like that. Now, if you can have a mechanism that the authority develop, and that mechanism is like a guardian stamp, but you need to be able to buy that and input that into your own environment as a way to have a certain Svanenmarked system. I mean, like, so these are crazy brain ideas, like, because the other way that you would bring your whole system to someone else,
to the facility,
to the facilitator, I don't know, that this is so many problems with that, you see.
I'd love to move to another question if we could, unless you have some last remarks.
I want to hear your
Luis.
comment on that.
No, please go ahead.
No, but I'd like to move to another topic. But did you have some?
No, please.
But could you finish on that? What I just want to hear your take on that.
Can you just repeat the
I mean,
question?
like the whole idea, can we make a certification service like a software plugin that you can then take in and use is that more feasible approach than to bring the system to the tester, which I think is very unfeasible with the IP problem and all that?
I think still we need to have a documentation point of view approach similar to what Elon Musk does to external authorities. Have full access to source code or something, it's not a proper approach. So I think it's more that finding the proper balance of what you need to document and describe, and then if they are lying in that, then they will get fined.
But there is also something I forgot to. There is also something I forgot to mention when talking about harmonized standards, is that when they are implemented, there is also this possibility of apply the self-assessment process. So instead of going to a third party to assess the conformity of your product, you can just show that you're following the standards and following the metrics and parameters in the standard.
That's a normal way of doing it, right?
Yeah.
So in most cases, for most companies, I don't need an external certification. They simply do the self-assessment, and if they get sued, they are required to show that they have done it.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
And then it's not a problem, really, I would say.
But I think what you are doing now, from a practicality point of view, maybe we're getting to ourselves ahead of the game. We need to build a verification model, and we don't need to test the code. When it's like, are we really doing that in other industries, in other parts, or is this a documentation process?
But I think, for one, so many other fields, like the medical field or whatnot, is heavily regulated, and it still works.
Yeah.
I'm sure we know it can be done.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a problem. The problem is that we don't have clear guidance standards of how to do it.
A really good point.
But perhaps we can just move to another question, and the time is flying away here, so we have to soon start to finish off here. But I would love to hear your thoughts, Luis, on more of a philosophical level. What do you think the proper level of regulation is? We know that too little regulation is horrible, and if we live in an anarchy, as you said in the beginning, that of course would be a situation no one wants, not in China, not in the US, and certainly not in Europe or Sweden. But then too much regulation, of course, is also problematic, and that will hinder innovation and could be also a very big problem for companies that don't dare to use data or AI. And just to give some more background before, I would love to hear your thinking here, is that the US recently, like a month ago, released their AI action plan. And one thing that Trump and here's Elon Musk's fingerprints was all over this, I can tell you. But one thing they said there is they really want to deregulate a lot in US and make sure that they can take the lead. They want to be the leader in the world, of course, in AI in US. And then it shouldn't, the regulation shouldn't hinder at least the progress in some way. We heard a lot of similar kind of thoughts, not the least by the Swedish Prime Minister, actually, who says we need to consider to deregulate in Sweden and Europe. So I guess the question then is, Luis, do you think the level of regulation, no one is asking for anarchy, but we need to have a balanced view of this. Is the level of regulation in Europe and Sweden too high?
For AI?
Yes.
I would say that I have to say that I like the approach of the AI Act. I have to say that, and when people say no, that's over-regulation. This is a really attempt or attack to the innovation because they are trying to over-regulate everything. My first thinking is that perhaps it would be good that they take a look and read through the AI Act and try to identify what is really regulated and what are really
AI Act is like 300 pages plus or something, right? I mean, it's not really a consumable piece of material.
Yeah, and that's a communication. I think that the
That's
problem is
communication
communication
problem.
issue. It's a communication problem.
Yeah.
Because probably not all the people as my role has to do my job at going through the regulation and try to interpret it. But and that's a communication problem. But if you look at what's the structure of this regulation and what really requires the control of the authorities and demands like really be compliant with, it's a small portion of the whole AI ecosystem because it's only targeting.
But no one knows that, right?
That's
the
exactly the problem.
Exactly.
Yes, so that's the
Because
problem.
it's only
So is that the problem of over-regulation or is it a problem of
Under communication or poor communication.
because if you see the pyramid, this famous pyramid is showing the levels of basically the
risk,
the risk level. It's just the tip of this pyramid that's regulated.
They have some requirements on the other levels as well.
But they are minimal, and actually minimal. It's in this minimum risk. It's only transparency. But
It's
okay,
only
that
But
you are
it's
aware.
still some requirements.
Yeah, but
It's
it's
not zero, but I agree. The high level is the highest level of requirements, for sure. Yes.
Yeah, but for example, informing a person that you are interacting with an AI.
Yeah.
But I have an anecdote that sort of backs up your thinking here. I remember when we had GDPR coming into Vattenfall. And we took it super serious because, we have 5 million or 4 million consumer customers and stuff like that, with electricity bills what we could do, because we were a big company and we were even also then we needed to show we were a state company, so we fucking needed to know this better than anyone. We put all the lawyers we had on it and basically read and dissected the law in and out better than the guys writing it, until we found a way to educate people on legitimate interest. When can you do you have a legitimate reason to use this? So we could get to a point where like we don't need to get compliance, we don't need to do the cookie thing, every fucking thing, because in order for us to take care of you as a customer, to manage your electricity, we need to know stuff in order for our systems to work. So in the end, it came back to super high degree of knowledge and understanding of the law, and then understanding how to make that simple for the
So we have a problem of communication, yes. But regarding the level of regulation, now specifically saying that, let's imagine that we had perfect communication, but we don't. But still, imagine we had. Is the level of regulation in Europe too high with the current AI Act and other acts that we do have? I mean, US claims so. They believe very much so, and they even believe the regulation in US is too high, which is lower potentially than Europe. So they want to deregulate a lot. We have a lot of politicians now. Even Ulf Kristersson came out and said, we need to pause the AI Act because it's not ready. Companies is going to get hindered by this. They don't think it's proper to do it like this. Do you think that level is too high, or not?
I think that the level might be there might be some overlappings that needs to be adjusted. There are some overlaps and probably some connections between regulations that could be let's say clean up. I would say that there are some things from GDPR that are already in the AI Act. There are some elements from the Data Act that probably the cybersecurity and the Red Directive that overlap. So,
and even conflicting in some cases.
And delivering a conflicting message to the organization. So in Red Directive, there was now an update and needs to take a look at the cybersecurity requirements, but the Cyber Resilience Act is also requesting some cybersecurity elements. So probably it's good to clean up and try to narrow down the scope of some of these regulations, so we can have from the companies a clear perspective of what is really needed and what we really need to take care of without these overlaps.
I mean, a good point, because it's so easy to add new regulation, but it's very, very seldom that we actually remove a regulation, right? So it creates a fragmentation and overlap, which is increasingly becoming more complex than ever, right?
So maybe I really like, if I summarize what I hear now, we can understand deregulation in two ways. Someone can understand deregulation as a way to, we're just going to take away regulation, we're going to go bananas and anarchy. But if we maybe you don't use the word deregulation, but decomplex, take away ambiguity, take away overlaps. So right now the problem is really why we can say we are over-regulated is that we have not one act, we have 4 or 5 different acts that creates regulatory uncertainty. So from that perspective, as long as we have a very clean setup, a simplified setup, maybe if you look at the net of everything, it's not less, it's perfect. But we need to deregulate in context of decomplex, take away complexity.
I mean, in software engineering, you call it you refactorize.
Refactorize.
That's perfect. We don't have a I love it. We're not going to deregulate. We're going to refactor regulation.
Yeah.
I love it.
But still, if I phrase it like this, then I'm trying to make it super clear question. Are you afraid that the level of regulation in Europe is hindering innovation for companies in Europe compared to other parts of the world?
I would say that rather than the level of regulation is the fear and the knowledge or the uncertainty
yes,
about
agreed.
what the regulation states, what's hindering the innovation.
Yes,
good
it's
point.
More than the problem.
Yes, agreed. That's a good point.
But I think you nailed it when we say, let's not use the word we need to deregulate, we need to refactor regulation.
Yeah,
that's a very interesting way of putting it.
Yeah, I think so. Cool. Okay. It's over 7. We should start to wrap up here a bit. Let me see here. We spoke a lot about compliance and regulation here, but there are a lot of other like ethical and more challenges that AI provides or creates for society. If you were, what are you afraid of when it comes to AI and society challenges beyond regulation?
I would say that it's what we can see, for example, with weaponization of AI. That's
the what?
The weaponization of AI.
Yes. Yeah.
AI as a tool or as a component in weapons and military industry. That's basically it's we have reached a level of democratization on AI that's basically the top of the tip of the hand of everyone. So it's like it can be misused and it can be incorporated in weapons and war components. It's beyond what we can imagine. And in those scenarios, the ethical uncertainties are quite broad.
And then, sorry for going back to regulation then, but EU Act, for example, is it doesn't include military use, for example, right? Nor would any kind of bad actor ever care about that, right?
Yeah, they don't care.
Cyber security criminals, why would they ever care, right? So what does really the AI Act help in these kind of really bad actor use cases? Right? Do you think we can have some way to manage that? Because, the AI Act at least will not handle that at all, right?
But I think the contribution, or one of the contributions of the AI Act is at least that makes us realize about the risks that come along with AI. That these bad actors, these bad guys can come with and bring to the table these risks, and at least it's part of the conversation when we talk about AI Act. It makes us aware about what are the risks. And
yes, it's no question that the regulation has a good purpose, right? So I don't think that we don't need to even argue that. I think that's of course a good purpose. It's just how do you get to the bad actors? And just to give an example, it was some example where red teaming is a technique that a lot of AI companies use to basically try to have some set of people that try to act as bad actors and try out the best they can to hack the model, remove the safeguards, and use it for bad use cases to just try it out. before they release anything, do red teaming, which is a good practice for anyone when releasing that. So they build this kind of AI agent kind of framework for doing red teaming. Now, suddenly, the bad actors got hold of this, and they use it to attack companies instead, right?
This is ironic.
It's ironic, yeah.
So, I mean, and of course they won't care because they know what they're doing is illegal already. If they use it to hack into a system or, use it for bad things, they are already breaking the law. So in some sense, I guess what I'm asking is, we have a lot of regulation, even though it's not AI specific, that will catch a lot of bad use cases, right? If you use it to break into a system, that we already have regulation for that. If you use it to kill a person, we already have rules for that. There is a lot of use cases for AI that is already captured by the normal regulation. Do you see? This is such a broad topic. We have spoken about this, Henrik, a bit in the past, but do we really need to have so much specific AI regulation that is focused on a technique and not the use case? Because most of the use cases are potentially covered already by existing regulation and law. Yeah. Wouldn't you say so?
Again, I think that the core, or at the core of the regulation, or when they devised this regulation, when they thought about this regulation, they were thinking about, the fundamental rights, the protection of the fundamental rights, and
but we have laws for that.
Yeah, we have laws about it and how to protect some of the fundamental rights, but how to make them accessible and understandable in a new context like AI for the population that is not aware about technology, that is not following technology. Probably that was also the intention to reflect in this new field. AI. I agree that there are already in place regulations that might take care of some of these criminal offenses and some of these bad behaviors. Where AI is basically a tool.
It's just a
to
tool.
Achieve.
It's a technique, right?
Yeah, exactly. But perhaps that's the scenario with these prohibited practices. But when we talk about the use or the deployment or the development of AI, at least what they try to do in this regulation is try to reflect some European philosophy or European values, and I think that it's something that's valuable and to see in a tangible way how this is reflected when we are deploying technology.
But I have, to some degree, I'm very much in the camp philosophically that why do we need an AI regulation when actually the application of AI is already regulated in normal law. You cannot kill people, you cannot like this. So, and I come from this camp quite strongly, it's almost saying we don't need AI regulation. We simply need to make sure that the real regulation is strong. But I am sort of flipping a little bit on this. And I'm not flipping, but when we've been working through it and basically try to take a step out and say, okay, regulation is not the end game. It's not it's a way for authorities to make us risk conscious. And the way I then interpret the AI Act or the need for the AI Act is basically because this is so new technology and there is an AI divide in know-how and knowledge of what it can do and how it works. So what you're doing is you're trying to, with in a way superficial regulation on AI, create an arena for risk consciousness around AI. And therefore it should not be needed, is my fundamental philosophy. But I can understand why it's needed from a risk consciousness point of view.
Good point. Yeah.
It's a good point. It's something that we internally we have also discussed about. Okay, the discussion with developing a framework or compliance framework just for AI. Something that I mentioned within the organization is, okay, this company is well known for some principles, and we have some guiding principles. We have a mission, we have a vision, and we have principles that we reflect in the products we currently deliver to the market. So I agree with the point that basically when we develop a new product using AI, the idea is basically to take those principles that are applicable for all the other products. We are ethical. We try to offer safety. We try to do the best with our products to reflect these principles when developing AI. So why we need, for example, to define responsible AI principles for the organization if we have some principles that are, let's say, outside of the scope of AI that are also applicable in the context of AI. And one of the things that one of my colleagues mentioned is, this is a new field, this is a new arena. And probably we need to, in some way, bring a reminder or bring some mental tool or kind of guiding tool to the people using this technology, that those principles that we already reflect in this context need to be translated to the new digital arena.
Yeah, but it's an interesting one because you could potentially have gone a different route where you fundamentally lived by the real regulation, the underlying regulation, and then made an AI Act how to apply or how this implicate. These laws exist. How are they implicated, or how do they manifest in AI? Yeah. So you could have approached the whole thing that we don't need a new regulation, but we need an amendment, and then
fix the old laws and also have a standard of how to comply with it.
I heard the argument why they didn't do that, because then they realized it would be all over the place and it would be very hard to find. So they thought they need to centralize. But
you can just have a standard instead then.
But I think, if you think about it, what is most important here? Is it the regulation or is it the harmonized standards that come out from it that in the end will be the real value?
From a practical
point of view, I think the harmonized standards is the real. This is when it gets real.
It's exactly, it's the real stuff we are going to implement and we are going to use to guide us.
Yeah. But anyway, it's a tricky one.
No, but it's a tricky one, and I hope everyone understands that I think no one of us, or I think no one in China or US believes that we should have no regulation. I think regulation is super important, and it would be horrible if we didn't have it. So to just make that super clear.
I mean, like, it's interesting to hear, George. I listened to a couple of the latest podcasts with Jeffrey Hinton. He's been on different things, and how he's now quite outspoken. Him and Assa, many are talking about that, who basically says, like, we cannot expect the money makers to also self-regulate. So there needs to be a way to steer this.
Yes.
Like like we have in air traffic or airplanes, medical fields.
Banking
but the problem is that, are we doing the right things? So I'm thinking we spend too much time on a stupid legal text when we should have spent all the time on harmonization standard approach. So we're getting stuck on the wrong thing. Is my sort of pet peeve here.
Yeah. Anyway, Luis, the time is flying away, and I'd like to ask you a rather philosophical question. So, if we believe that AGI will happen, do you believe AGI will come?
I think so.
Any time frame potentially when it will happen?
Probably. I would say that 5 to 10 years. I would say
it's the whole defining it first.
Probably it will be a spectrum. Of course, it will continue to increase in small iterations. So it's super hard to say exactly when it will happen.
But it's not an if, it's a when. I think so too.
Yeah.
Cool. But when it does arrive, then we can think about two extremes here. One extreme is that it will be the horrible, Terminator, the Matrix of the world, where the AI will try to kill us all, and that will be the end of civilization as we know it. Or it could be the other extreme, which is that it is the utopian future, like Nick Bostrom wrote about in the Deep Utopia book, where we live in a world of abundance, where the cost of intelligence and products and services will go to zero. And it's a Star Trek kind of a world or whatnot. And humans are basically free to pursue their, freedom, creativity, happiness, and as they see fit. Where do you stand on this spectrum?
I would add a third alternative, the Wall-E alternative. Have you watched the Wall-E movie?
Yeah.
What happened with the population? Basically, everybody is fat.
What's
overweight.
Utopia was also dystopian.
Yeah, exactly. It was a kind of because one of my concerns with this situation is that, and one of the concerns I have with this situation is that, and probably we're starting to see how the impact on, for example, the critical thinking on the use of AI. We are starting to see a less or a reduction in the critical thinking with what AI is generating. It's like it's more often that people just take for granted that what AI is generating is the truth.
Making us lazy.
And it's making us lazy.
Not thinking.
And not thinking. So
some people claim we're making people stupider. It's actually a scientific experiment.
I've seen scientific research claiming is that we get stupider by using it.
Yeah.
So
that's what you're onto here. Yeah.
So probably we will see. I don't think that this will be the apocalypse or the end of the world. But I have some concerns. I have some concerns about the how the society, how the humanity will lose certain abilities if we are not taking actions to, let's say, keep the AI as a nice tool to leverage our potential, to help us to boost our potential.
Yeah. And to fix our illnesses, poverty, education.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of replacing us, because it seems in some cases that we are just giving it the role to represent us, like the kids at the school basically using it for writing the report.
It's good in a sense, right?
Yeah, but you know the child has not learned a thing if not doing it right. So, but it's a tricky one because there are so many things that sort of the spectrum of dystopia here that sort of it all leads down to that we need to take in the reins and have a very clear objective of how we want this to go. This is number one. I think another key comment has always been, like someone our guest has said it, and I kind of agree with it more and more. Why won't we have both at the same time? In the world, it has always been riches and poor, utopia and dystopia at the same time. We have war zones in some parts of the world, and we have quite healthy nations in other parts. So it's a little bit like full utopia or full dystopia. It's probably the reality is both.
And I don't know. I would dare to say that the level of impact or the level of presence of this utopia, dystopia connected to AI will depend also on the level. It will be different depending on the country, depending on the region where we see this. It will be different. The impact probably in rich societies if we compare to poor areas in the world. So that's my.
Will it increase the divides between rich and poor? The ones with AIs and not. That's a really real fact. Yeah. You know, risk, of course. That'd be. I mean, like, so we're talking about people who can work at a cybernetic speed with a cyborg versus the rest of us.
And will the big divide to the few tech giants in US and China continue to increase or decrease? Some people claim, I heard this, and I thought it was rather wise, is that the winner after AGI comes is the part with the capital and electricity. Electricity, I guess AGI can help with and fix fusion or something, but with capital. And then you can think of which part of the world or which part of the companies have that. And then you know the answer, which is potentially a bit dystopian, I would say. But yeah.
Because we get the fundamental distribution problem here. How to have equality and inclusiveness and diversive society where everybody has their piece of it. I mean, like, and this is where we have had another deeper philosophical question: why open source? We had Eric Hugo, who sort of draws the parallel of how open source and Linux saved Africa. You know, like if you think back, what happened when something was available in abundance so people could innovate on their own, versus everything needs to be paid and proprietary. So yeah.
Luis, are you more positive than negative about AI?
I would say that I'm in between. Yes, sir.
You're both.
Yeah, I'm both.
Lagom.
Luis Martinez, it's been a pleasure to have you here. I hope you can stay on for some additional off-camera kind of discussions. I have a lot of questions I know I want to ask you, so I'd love to have a continued discussion. But thank you so much for coming to the AI After Work
Happy
podcast.
to be here.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.